Okay, continuing on with 6.7, the B part. A couple more involved examples here. So if we have one where we have a cube term, that means we are going to get three answers. So the first thing we need to do is to get all the terms on the left side and 0 on the right. So here we have to get the negative or get the 17x squared on the left side. So when we do that, we'll have the 6x cubed. Make sure you have them in descending order. So this negative 17x squared has got to go next because we're going 3, 2, 1. So now we have all the terms on the left side and 0 on the right. Now we have to look for a greatest common factor. In other words, is there a variable or a number that come out of each of the terms? Well, we can't take a number out of these, but we can take a variable because we have a variable in each term of the polynomial, and the lowest power is 1. So we can take that out. So when we take a x out of the first term, we're left with 6x squared. When we take an x out of the second term, we're left with negative 17x. When we take an x out of the third one, we have 12. And now it's set equal to 0. So now we look to see if we can factor what's in parentheses. So we see that in the parentheses, we have a number in front of the x squared term, or a coefficient. So we're going to have to use the AC method. So the A is 6, the B is negative 17, and the C is 12. So A times C, 6 times 12 is 72. So we look for two factors of 72. When combined, are going to be negative 17. In this case, they're x's. So the two factors of 72, when multiplied are 72, and when added are negative 17, are negative 8 and negative 9. So what we're doing then is substituting these two numbers for our middle term so that we can factor them. So I set the 8 with the 6x squared because the 6 and the 8 are factors of each other. In other words, they're even numbers. And the second set, I put the 9 here because these are both divisible by 3. These are both divisible by 2. So now we have 4 terms. It's our grouping. So we factor the first two, and we look to see if we can take a number out. So we can take a 2 out. There's a variable in both, so we can take the lowest power of the variable. So when I say take out, meaning divide. So here, when we take the 2x out, we're going to be left with, in the first term, 3x, and in the second term, negative 4. So here, we can take a 3 out, but we want to take a negative out, meaning divide by a negative, so that our lead term in the parentheses will be positive. So when we take a negative 3 and divide it into negative 9, we get 3x. Take the 12 and divide by negative 3, and we get negative 4. If you do it correctly, you'll end up with two parentheses that are identical. So they are common, so they come out. And don't forget, you still have the x out here. So when the common factor comes out, we put in parentheses what is left. So we have 2x and a negative 3 in the next parentheses, all equal to 0. So don't forget, if it's a cubed equation, you're going to have three answers. So this x is a factor, we set that equal to 0. And there's one of our answers. We set the second factor equal to 0 and solve it, and we get 4/3. We set the third one equal to 0 and solve it, and we get 3/2. So we're going to have three answers: 0, 4/3, and 3/2. So, just as a little review, we have an equation that has a cubed in it. It's going to be three solutions. If we have one that's squared, there'll be two solutions. And of course, an equation that just has an x is one solution. So I tried to put some steps here for you. So first, you want to do any indicated operations. So in this one, we have to distribute the x. We have 9x squared minus 12x equals -4. Then we have to make sure all the terms are on one side of the equal sign and 0 on the other. So we had to add 4 to both sides. Now we have all the terms on one side and 0 on the other. And when you do that, you want to make sure that all the terms are in descending order. So we got x to the second, x to the first, and then no x. Now factor out any greatest common factor if there is one. So here we don't have a common factor. There's no variable in each of them, so we can't take that out. There's no factor that we can divide evenly into 9, 12, and 4. So then we want to go, so now we want to factor that. So if we have a number, a coefficient out in front of the x squared term, we need to use the AC method. So A is 9, C is 4. So we take 9 times 4 is our 36. The B value here is -12. So two factors of the 36 that make up -12 are -6x and -6x. These are the same, so it really doesn't matter what order we put these in. So we're replacing the -12x with -6x and -6x. That gives us our 4 terms, which means we're going to use grouping. So when we do that, we can take a 3x, meaning divide by it, take that out of each of these terms. So there's our 3x that we take out. In parentheses goes what's left. So 9x squared divided by 3x is 3x. -6x divided by 3x is -2. Here, we can take a 2 out. There's no variable here, so we can't take a variable out. So because this lead term is negative, we want to take the -2. So we take that out. We're left with 3x for our first term and -2, all equal to 0. So then we set each of those equal to 0 and solve. So in this case, it's we have already done this one, but just to get the steps down, set each factor equal to 0 and solve, add 2 to both sides, and then divide by 3. So in each case, we get 2/3. So you have to enter both of those in because we have to have 2 solutions. So that, in a nutshell, is the B part, and that wraps up all the topics